heard this line from authors, whether a big five publisher is publishing their book or they're going to self-publish, they all think they're going to make a lot of money. Now, you may make a lot of money with your book, but you don't want to count on that.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage. Okay, everybody. Imagine spending years writing your masterpiece only to discover you've been following advice that's completely wrong. Well, today we're joined by someone who's seen it all, the successes, the failures, and most importantly, the myths that destroy dreams. Terry Whalin has ghostwritten for sports legends, worked behind the scenes at major publishing houses, and now he's ready to shatter the illusions that keep authors stuck. On today's episode, we're going to decode the real secrets of publishing success. Terry, welcome to the show.
Danielle, great to be here with you.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation. Of course, I'm really excited. And I just have to say thank you so much for sending me a copy of the book. Everyone listening today, this is the book we're going to be focusing on today. Terry has a wealth of experience, but this is the prime one here. And I have to say, I love the cover itself. It's bright orange, it stands out, and there's no mistaking what the book's about because of all the books on the covers. Do you design your own covers by any chance?
I don't. That's something that Morgan James did. And on this particular book, I managed to tap my long-term friend Jerry B. Jenkins to write the foreword for the book. So I was very glad to get his words in there as well. So
yeah, that's really awesome. And it's always great that you actually have a couple pages of really strong recommendations here in the book too. So if anybody's wondering, where's the credibility behind this, it's solidly backed up. So really awesome stuff. But before we dive into the book itself, I think it's important that we learn a little bit more about you. You've had a 40+ year journey in publishing. You've ghostwritten for some really cool celebrities. So I'm wondering if you'd like to walk us through that journey and to tell us about, that moment when you realized, it's time for me to stop ghostwriting for others and start writing for myself. I wonder if there was a specific moment.
Yeah, I majored in journalism in college. That's what I thought I was going to be like a newspaper reporter. That's what I trained for at Indiana University. But about halfway through my sophomore year, I was sitting at the Indiana Daily Student newspaper. This is back in the pre-computer days. So I was sitting in my old Royal typewriter and I couldn't get my fingers on the right keys, Danielle. And I kept muttering to myself, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. And this little blonde-haired girl that was sitting next to me, she turned to me and she said, "Oh, Terry, don't say that, because one of these days when you really need Jesus, you'll call out for him and he won't be there." And I thought, what's this? I'm a Christian. I go to church when I'm at home. I read the Bible in church when I'm at home. I mean, I didn't really know much about Jesus, Danielle. I figured out looking back, but she recommended that I go to this little bookstore off the Indiana campus, couple blocks, and they had pretty cards and posters, and maybe I'd find a book that interested me. So I wandered down there a couple of days later. I bought this book called Jesus the Revolutionary. I thought, how in the world could Jesus be a revolutionary? And I took that book back to my room. I read that book. It showed me a different side of Jesus than I'd ever seen before. About that time, some people invited me to this Jesus People gathering in downtown Bloomington. They were sitting on little scraps of carpets with little candles lit. Those people had something that I didn't have. And so I got a Bible and I changed the direction of my life. So instead of becoming a newspaper reporter like at the Chicago Tribune or the Indianapolis Star, one of those places, I joined this group called Wycliffe Bible Translators. And I spent 17 years of my life in linguistics and doing that stuff. And there's actually a New Testament I have on my shelf from the Cachiquel people in Guatemala that wouldn't exist if I hadn't made those kind of choices. And I wandered back to my writing and started writing for magazines. And then I was at a writers conference. And I always encourage authors to get to a writers conference because you meet people. I mean, who you know is almost as important as what you know at the end of the day.
That is true.
And so I was at this writers conference walking around with this editor, and she told me, she said, Terry, I've got a problem. I have all these books, children's books that we publish at David C. Cook, and I don't have a single book that tells kids about the world and how it's a big world out there. And that's a part of our mission statement. What kind of ideas do you have? Well, back then my kids were little, and so I was reading these children's books to them. And I knew that Stephen Lawhead is how he publishes his fantasy books, but Steve Lawhead had these books that called Howard. Howard had a spaceship. Howard had a hot air balloon. They combined real pictures with a little cartoon character. And I said, what if we used our real pictures from Wycliffe combined with a cartoon character to show kids different occupations? She said, oh, good idea. Write that up and send that to me. And so I made a little note. I wrote that up and I sent it to her. And that ultimately became my first book that was published in 1992, a little children's book I did called When I Grow Up, I Can Go Anywhere for Jesus. Now, at this point in my life, Danielle, I've been an editor. I go to writers' conferences. I listen to writers, their ideas, and I say, hey, that's a good idea. Write that up and send that to me. Well, what I know from going to these conferences over and over is that only about 10 or 15% of those people will actually send me their stuff when I do that. So that's one of the big takeaways that I'd like people to know is that when somebody tells you to send your stuff, send it to them.
Right,
I mean,
right.
it's not complicated, but you do have to send it in as one of the first steps.
Right, and just don't just like hold on to it and wait, send it in, spread the reach, makes a lot of sense. That's really cool, that journey that you took, and here you are now with, a whole guide for publishing this from what you've learned throughout your life ever since. So, really amazing stuff. I think it's time that we dive into the book itself a little bit. Um, so I'm curious to know, you tackle a lot of different myths, one of them being my book will make me a lot of money, which I think a lot of authors already know it's probably not going to, but why is this such a dangerous misconception for new authors? I'm thinking like some people really are trying to do it for the money. Why is that, and why is it not quite incorrect?
Well, I've heard this line from authors, whether a big five publisher is publishing their book or they're going to self-publish, they all think they're going to make a lot of money. Now, you may make a lot of money with your book, but you don't want to count on that. You want to publish your book for other reasons. It makes you an authority in the area. You know something about the topic. It opens up speaking opportunities, other kinds of doors of opportunity for you to be like on this podcast or on radio shows or television.
Right.
Those are all good reasons to do it. But on the financial end, there's so much of the book publishing process that's outside of our control. Like, I can't make a bookstore carry and sell your book. I mean, they may do that, but we can't guarantee that. So much of the process is just nothing that I could do anything about. So you really want to just realize that and understand that as you go through the publishing process.
Right, just take everything with a grain of salt, and grounding in realism as well. It's something that maybe you can get lucky, maybe you can get rich from it, but it's more so about the residual effects. I always say to people, it's about the speaking engagements you might get after, or the, just building your brand in general, or having a business card to hand to your clients. So always many different benefits from it. And that's just one of the many tips within the book. But kind of segueing past that, I just mentioned before, like the importance of building a brand, of having a platform. That's something else that you talk about pretty heavily in the book. So, what does that mean, and why can every author benefit from that?
Yeah, well, no matter how you publish, at the end of the day, we all need readers for our
True.
books. And that's really what your platform is your connection to that audience and to that reader. And that can come in a lot of different ways, but they've pretty much proven out there, Danielle, that somebody has to hear about your book a dozen, maybe 2 dozen times before they say, oh, 10 publishing myths. I should buy that book. So you have to take action as an author to be encouraging people, telling people about your book. That's one of the reasons I would say that publishers are really interested in your social media numbers. And it's not that social media sells books, but it does give people that exposure to your book that you really need. And when you give them exposure on social media, it's not just saying things like buy my book, buy my book. Nobody cares about that, but really emphasize the benefits of what somebody's going to get out of reading your book. That's what you want to emphasize out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's more about like I always say when I'm helping a client ghostwrite a book or edit a book, you have to plan for those sort of posts in advance. Like make sure that every chapter can reflect a post later on or a talk you might give, just whatever it might be to build that platform. So planning ahead too is a huge part, I would say.
It is.
Yeah, amazing. So those are just, again, everybody, some of the tips. Terry obviously been doing this for a while, and he could probably talk about so many different aspects of it. Another one of your concepts in the book is the Mythbuster actions, the MBA concept. So I think it's really cool that you have that because you can't just tackle a myth and say why it's wrong. You also have to give action toward it. So can you talk a little bit about that and why you chose to include that in the book, but also how we can benefit from that?
Yeah, it's great to get these books, to read these books, to listen to them, to get the head knowledge. But the real place where the rubber meets the road for your book is when you take action on these items. And so in each chapter, I tried to include a practical action step that an author could take related to the content in that book. And that's what this Mythbuster action is. I mean, I talk to authors all the time as an acquisitions editor, Danielle, and you can imagine people will tell me, well, my audience is over on YouTube, or my audience is on LinkedIn or Facebook or one of these other social media platforms out there, which is great. Don't get me wrong. But
Right.
in the business, we call those platforms rented platforms because I don't control LinkedIn or Facebook or any of those things. As a matter of fact, knowingly or unknowingly, I could violate their terms and get kicked off of them tomorrow. So you don't want to build your stuff over there. You want to build your stuff on your own website, your own newsletter, things that you have control over. And that's the type of focus that I tried to do in these Mythbuster actions, to give people a practical action step that they could take that would be something they could control too at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think these days everybody resorts, right to the popular mediums, the TikTok, the Instagram, the Facebook. But I wonder if you ever received any pushback about that, like people who say, like, "Oh, no one's going to look at my website. I have to use Instagram. That's all people use these days." Have you ever heard that sort of reaction before? Because I'm sure that's nice to
Sure, I
hear.
get that. I get that kind of pushback, but all of us are reading our own email. And we're reading it all the time. And you may think that editors aren't reading their email, but they are. They're all looking at that stuff. Now, they may only look at your email for a couple of seconds, depending on what you pitch them in that email, but they're definitely opening it up and seeing what's in it.
Right. Okay. So there you go. I mean, no matter what method, someone's going to see it one way or another. But that I do see your point about building it on your own because you never know. The platform could shut down one day. Something might happen. So it's always good to have those backups and really spread your reach.
Well,
Um,
even I mean, Morgan James, one of our best-selling authors is Jeff Walker, who drove his book to the #1 position on the New York Times list called Launch, and he's the product launch formula guy. He's made like $1 billion for his clients out there, and his whole thing is doing this launch on email. I mean, it's using the old tools, that standbys that we all use, rather than going to TikTok or something like that.
Understood. Well, awesome stuff. Thanks for that. But before we, transition out of the book itself, one last question is, which of these myths would you say is the one that people make or believe most often? Which one is the one that's most common that people fall into the trap of believing?
Yeah, one of the most common ones, I think, is that my publisher will market and promote my book, which
Mm.
is, it's a myth because sure, your publisher is going to market and promote your book, but at the end of the day, you as the author are the one that really has the greatest passion and the greatest persistence and perseverance with your book at the end of the day. I mean, Danielle, in 2007, I was a literary agent. I had a little literary agency in Scottsdale, Arizona. And Mark Victor Hansen, the co-author on Chicken Soup for the Soul, was having this event out in Los Angeles called Mega Book Marketing University. He invited me to come. I went out there. I took pitches from people during that event. But at that point in my life, I'd written about 50 books for traditional publishers. So they were making pretty books. They were putting them in the bookstores, all that kind of thing. But when you write books like that, those publishers, maybe once a year, maybe quarterly, will send you a financial statement about how you're doing. Well, I was getting my financial statements and they were all in the minus category. I wasn't making any money on these books. And it's like, I must be doing something wrong here with my book that's not really working for me. So when I was at Mega Book Marketing University, I decided to sit there with all those 400 people that were there and I listened to all the speakers. Well, one of the speakers there was Jack Canfield, the other co-author on Chicken Soup for the Soul. And Jack has written this book called The Success Principles about what does it take to really be successful with your book. And so the very first success principle says that I will take 100% responsibility for my own success. Now, none of us want to take 100% responsibility. We want somebody else to do it. But I decided during that conference that I was going to begin to be telling other people about my book. Sure, I had a terrywhalin.com website, but I was doing little else back then to do something. So I decided to take 100% responsibility for my own success. So I started blogging. I started doing more to write for magazines and other things to really get out there and be telling people about my book. And then my whole situation shifted. My book started to sell and a lot of great things happened by doing that kind of effort.
Right. That's a tremendous thing that so many people, do fall into misconception of. I talk to authors all the time and they are always saying the same thing. I'm books out there, but I'm not getting enough sales. Well, why? Well, what are you doing to market it? So it's great that you advocate for that you do need to put yourself out there and you have some great tips for that. So transitioning a little bit into the writing process itself, I mean, you've written so many different books, but I'm wondering if, for this particular book, there's any type of new approach you might have used that you hadn't already before. I mean, this is more of a how-to 10 myth type thing. Has it differed at all from your past writings?
All my books are nonfiction books that I've done through the years. So typically, when I started this book, and when I start almost every book, I encourage people to begin with a book proposal. Now, I
Mm.
know book proposals are hard to do, but that's really your business plan as far as what you're going to do, who your reader is, who your competition is, what you're going to do to promote it. All those kinds of things are a part of that. And I have written two proposals through the years that got six-figure advances at publishers. So I know a little bit about this whole book proposal thing, and because I've reviewed thousands of book proposals over the years. So out of my own frustration, years ago, I wrote this book called Book Proposals That Sell, 21 Secrets to Speed Your Success. Now, publishing's changed a lot since I wrote that first book, but that book helped people get an agent, get a large advance, get a publisher. All kinds of great things have happened from that book. It has over 150 five-star reviews out there. But because publishing's changed so much, a couple of years ago, I did a new version of this book called, it's just Book Proposals That Sell, 21 Secrets to Speed Your Success, but it's a revised edition. And people can get that book for free from me, the whole book. If all they have to do is go to bookproposals.ws, and they can download the whole book. Now,
Wow.
why do you think I'd give that away, Danielle? I give that away because one of the things we've learned at Morgan James is that if you get that ebook from me and start to read that ebook, there's a high probability you're going to turn and buy the print copy of the book. So you don't lose anything by giving away that free ebook. You actually are driving ebook sales and
Yeah,
print sales by giving away that ebook.
you're spreading the word.
Absolutely.
Makes a lot of sense too. Yeah, so you see that because that's another technique, creating that ebook or that lead magnet, whatever it might be, to draw the audience in. That's really interesting. Now another thing I had to ask is you do have a blog with over 1,700 entries. How does this blogging complement your book writing? Do you draw upon the blogs for the novel itself? Do the blogs come from your novels, or perhaps it's completely different? What's your strategy there?
Yeah, I started blogging in the early days of blogging, and I got criticized a lot by it. I had some people say, "Good grief, you're an acquisitions editor at a publishing house. Why should you be blogging? Don't spend your time doing that." Well, I started my little blog on the writing life, and I've consistently been blogging every week since 2004. And so that has built this huge wealth of material that I have over 1,700 entries in my blog, Danielle. And I have this little device that goes out there online and looks for my name out there. About a year ago, I found this article on the top 27 content producers out there. And it said that there were over 600 million blogs out there. I mean, a lot of people have started a blog, they abandoned their blog, but I'm still going. I just finished my blog article that will release tomorrow, as a matter of fact. I was one of the top 27 content producers in this article. Seth Godin, Ryan Holiday, Jeff Goins, but they also included me. And it's not that I'm doing anything magical here. I'm just blogging every week. And that persistence and perseverance for you as the listener will really pay off in the long run. I have about 400 people that get my blog every Monday on their email. And so lots of people read this, and I do it for fun, as much as anything. It's a way to capture my stories, the different experiences that I have, good and bad, in the publishing world, and just try to help people. That's part of the reason I do it.
I love that. You have great intentions and just like a mindset to help others improve as well. And so the blog is only, a benefit of that. And also, of course, it helps you build your audience, as we talked about before, really just driving that engagement before the sales. So amazing stuff there. So you have all these books out, but obviously you're not anywhere near finished with your journey here. So what's next on the agenda? What can we be excited for the coming years to come?
Yeah, the thing that I'm doing these days, and I've been doing this for the last 13 years, I've been working as an acquisitions editor at Morgan James Publishing. And so I'm still helping authors, still doing book deals, helping authors get published. And so I want people to reach out to me. I mean, that's why I have my personal email address in my Twitter profile. I have 175,000 followers over there. And I have my terrywhalin.com email there because I want to help people figure out the best way to get their books published out there at the end of the day. Self-publishing is great and exploding, but it has that little word in there, Danielle, called self.
Right.
And when you self-publish, the challenge with that is it's all you. You have the total responsibility for that. And I've met authors that have spent $10, $15, $20,000 on that self-publishing process, and their books on their own website and Amazon. That's all it is. Well, Amazon is a big customer of Morgan James, but they're only 24% of our overall business. So the way I look at it, you've published with Amazon, you're missing 76% of what we do for the book out there. We're selling our books into 98% of the bookstores in North America, including the brick and mortar stores. So the other day I was looking for one of our covers, and the very first place I found it was at Target.com because we sell books at Target. It's one of our places. So, I just encourage people to really look at all the different options and find the right one for you here at the end of the day. I mean, maybe you're chasing an agent. I've been an agent. I've worked with agents. I love literary agents. Don't get me wrong here, but I'm working on a book right now with a couple of guys that they've been trying to find a publisher since like 2022. The last 3 years that they had an agent, they shopped their book all over the place. They almost got Maria Shriver to take it at Penguin, but that didn't happen. Their agent gave up on them. Now we contracted the book. They're going to be at a large conference in Boston in November, and they're going to have books at that conference because they came with Morgan James, and we're going to get their book out there into the bookstore. So yeah, just look at all the different options out there and really be careful about which choice you make in that area.
Thank you for sharing that with us. You're right. You do have to, look at all your options and make the right choice. And if you're not sure, everybody, I mean, there's tons of tips here to help you figure it out too. So, all you have to do is click on over to Terry's sites and, check out the book itself. But then also, it's great that you have your personal email out there for people to reach out and ask questions. So you're always there to just help the community, and that's just so inspiring. I really think that's great.
And Danielle, I've tried to make it really easy for people to get this book too, because I've set up a website. If they go to publishingoffer.com, that's simple, publishingoffer.com, you can get this book for only $10. And that includes the shipping, along with over $200 worth of free bonuses. Now my bonuses aren't just rinky dinky things. I actually interviewed one of my writer friends that self-published, but he has made thousands of dollars and thousands of book sales selling his books to public libraries. It's something that people don't even think about. I mean, there's over 9,000 public libraries in this country. This guy found a list and took an hour or two every day. He called these libraries, got the librarian on the phone, pitched his book, clinched the sale, packed up his books, mailed them to the library with an invoice, got his books in the library. I mean, sure, it takes work to do that kind of thing, and you have to persevere, but any of us can do those kinds of things to get our book out there. We just have to take action.
I love that. All you have to do is take action. That's really inspiring, and thank you for making it so accessible for us. I mean, the best way for people to learn is just to have a book handy to pick up and learn from. So I appreciate that. And like Terry's told us, you can also head to Terry's websites as well, to terrylinks.com, you said. Is that correct?
Uh,
And
well,
publishingoffer.com?
yeah, publishing offer, but Terry Whalin is where my website is, or they can go to my blog is another way. I've also got an 11th myth, Danielle, that people can get, because
Oh, please. Yeah.
as I was doing this book, Alice Kreider, who's an acquisitions editor, when she sent back her endorsement, she told me, she said, "Terry, you're missing the 11th myth." I'm like, "Oh, okay, Alice, I'll buy it. What's the 11th myth?" She said, "Well, the 11th myth should say, if I send my book to Oprah, she'll book me on her show." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's a really good myth, because that's not a real effective way to promote your book." But a lot of people think about doing that. So what I decided to do is I wrote that chapter, and then when we designed this book, we designed that chapter to look like the rest of the book. And people can get that for free from me if they go to terrylinks.com/11th myth /11th myth. That's where Terry Links comes into the conversation there.
All right. Well, hey, there we have it, right? I mean, those are the links. We're going to put it in the description box of this podcast today to everybody, so we can go ahead and hook on over and get connected. Terry, that's so inspiring. This has been a wonderful conversation. I think we have a lot to look forward to coming from you for the years to come. So thank you so much for joining us. It's really been a pleasure.
Danielle, I appreciate the opportunity, and I believe what Marcus Duhay, who just stepped back from being the CEO of Penguin Random House, the largest publisher in the world. I heard him say on a webinar that we live in one of the greatest times in human history since Gutenberg invented the printing press. And I believe that too. I mean, we have huge opportunities out there as authors. We just have to knock on the doors and keep looking for those opportunities, and then seizing them when they happen.
I love that. That's all you have to do. Seize your chance, take advantage. And that's really inspiring to leave us off with. So thanks again for joining us. And to the audience members, also remember that, successful authors, they write great books, but they also understand the business of publishing. And Terry here has given us the roadmap to avoiding those myths and focusing on what actually works. So thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. And Terry, and thank you so much for sharing your decades of wisdom with us. It's been an amazing conversation. And everybody listening, we'll see you next time on the Authors on Mission podcast.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or a leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.